And there we go. The chime of a recording starting. Skirt. We were just talking about how we have a little more ADHD than normal these days. I don't know where this conversation's going to go, but we're going to get it started.
Here we go.
And I have a different background. My house is taken apart right now, which is why my ADHD is raging. I was just telling Lucas that when I don't know where things are, when things start to get moved, I have a serious level of discomfort internally. Something's raging in me that needs to get everything figured out and in its place.
Control.
Gotta have it. But what were we just talking about? Well, what was the topic we're going to introduce today?
We were saying, kind of a couple different ideas that I think work together. And one of them is that, you could put someone who doesn't want it at all in the best program that offers everything and them, struggle to get it, if not get it. And you could put someone who's just like dying for it. Like they do anything for recovery, jump how high, run, do whatever. In a program that really is pretty bare bones and doesn't offer much, and then be able to get it. If even a program at all. I mean, you see people going to 12-step meetings who just really want it and are desperate for it and never go to treatment, IOP, anything like that. I think the nuance becomes like the in-between of like, well, what do you do with the guy that really doesn't want it, but like they're in danger, or because this is kind of what we see. What was the quote from Euphoria?
An addict only reaches out for help when they run out or exhaust all of their options.
Yeah. And I feel like
run out of options. That's when the addict is like, okay, you got me. I'll go. So I'll do something.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of our guys that we work with. And it's funny, like most of it falls on the parents of like taking away those options. Like it's not just, sometimes it's like, oh, this job fired them and this happened and that happened. But most of the time it's like, well, they live with the parents and the parents are paying for their car and their car insurance and their health insurance and their spending budget and, their rent because they live with them and all these things. So when the parents say like, hey, this option of like us helping is out, that's kind of everything. And then it's like, all right, well then I'll go get help. But that's how we get a lot of our guys.
I think it's taking extreme measures to show them that your way isn't working. And for parents, that's really scary, giving up control on their end to give their loved one control for them to see that like, okay, do it your way without our help and see how far your way gets you. So it's doing that to an extreme where it's like, hold on, wait, for a parent, you're telling me I've got to kick my child out of the house? That's scary. Well, you know what could happen to them out there in the real world? It's like, yeah, that's just kind of like what we need to do. It's like, if they want to do it their way, let them do it their way without your guardrails and see where it gets them. Let them exhaust their options.
And I think that's like because we know that's like something that sparks change in mindset and like what they're willing to do. But I think B, like more importantly, I feel like it's for the health of the family. That it's like, how long can you keep living like this with, a lot of times in our case, for like sober living guys like your son, but it could be your daughter or your husband or your wife or whatever, like in your house, just causing chaos and stealing stuff and lying and doing drugs and drinking. And you're just like, God, when is the next day I'm going to go into their room and find them unresponsive? Or they're gone again and I have no idea where they are, or like whatever the case is. It's like, it's just really hard to live like that. And I think that parents, deserve on some level to be able to have boundaries of just like, this is what we are going to and not going to tolerate in our house. And so I think it's perfect that most time when parents just enact those boundaries, that ends up like the byproduct is, well, shit, now I can't live here. They're not giving me money to do drugs or drinking. And that's always, and side tangent, that's always funny because sometimes I'll have parents that are like, They're like, well, we don't give him money for drugs and alcohol. We just pay his rent and all of his bills. And I'm like, so that any money he makes at his job can go purely to drugs and alcohol. It's like, it's just a way to make like a degree of separation to where parents can kind of feel good about it of like, no, 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 we would never give him cash. We're not like that. We know better than that. It's like, it's just the kind of addict alcoholic math is interesting of like, well, if mom can pay my rent, that's $800 that I don't have to spend, you know, from my paycheck that now I can put straight towards drugs and alcohol. So just changes like that make it to where it's like, well, now that mom's not paying my rent, I got to spend this $800 that used to go to drugs and alcohol on my rent. So that means I can't do as much drugs and alcohol, or I'll just not pay my rent. But then now I get evicted. And so now I have nowhere to live. So I'm living in my car. And then I didn't pay my car payment for the same reason, or my car insurance. And it's like, you can just see how things like quickly spiral out of control. And it's not like we want them to spiral out of control, but it's just seeing them for what they are. It's like, this is what it would look like if you weren't being propped up by someone else that is essentially enabling and codependency to make your addiction work. But your addiction, like on its own, like you doing it your way, whatever, doesn't work at all. It's a fairy tale. It only works if someone pays all your bills or does this for you or does that for you. So it kind of falls apart. And I think just letting it fall apart, and it's controlled demolition, right? So like, we want it to be the least amount possible. Like, you don't want anyone to get serious criminal charges. You certainly don't want anyone to like have serious health complications or get hurt in any kind of way. But sometimes we know minor versions of those are kind of part of it, but they end up being the consequences that like fuel the recovery on the hard days when they don't want it, where they're like, yeah, but I got this charge hanging over my head, or I did just overdose last month. Whereas if there's none of those consequences, it's like, no, life was great. I just need to get out of my way and let me do my thing. Sorry, that was a long rant.
No, that made me think of another interesting point that is worth mentioning. But a lot of families that I think struggle more is families who have multiple kids. So that the son or daughter who's struggling, they have siblings who's not. And I think for a parent, you see my cat walking in the background. But for a lot of moms and dads, I think they spend their whole life saying, I love all of my kids equally. I do things equally for all of my kids. You can't, even if you do have one that's a little easier to deal with and that you're favoring a little more than another on any given day, you always have to show all of your cards as like, nope, I love you all the same. We do everything equally. But once you have a child slip into the world of addiction and substance use disorder, like that is no longer a thing. Like, you can't treat them equally. It's no longer, I can pay Susie's rent and James's rent. And I can pay Susie's car insurance and James's car insurance. Like, the script is about to flip here, and we've got to start doing things a different way. And rightfully so. Just look at it as like, you have one child that's like on a good path, that's doing things that's beneficial for their life in the long run. And you have one that's like starting a dumpster fire, torching it all. That was just one thing that stood out to me as you were going on that rant.
Thanks for calling it a rant. And when they're adult children, I feel like ideally it's unequal because, adult children are generally independent. And if you're a 25-year-old that isn't addicted to drugs and alcohol, ideally, most likely you are paying your own rent and you're paying your own bills and you have a good job and you're doing so, like, you don't need as much attention. But that addict alcoholic, we know, like, needs attention all the time because it's like just constant crisis and chaos. Most of it probably unconsciously created to get the needs, of like, you got to have like the job that fired you because that's how I'm going to get mom to pay my rent so that I can not pay my money on rent so that I can spend it on drugs and alcohol. Like, it just kind of comes with the territory that you make all this chaos.
Yeah. I want to go back to the initial comment or opening comments of, you could put the person who doesn't want it in the best program that's out there and it not work. You could also put a person who doesn't want it in the best program out there and it work.
Mm-hmm.
And like, how do you get to that point?
I mean, that's essentially what we do.
Yes. And like, my viewpoint on that is like, if I'm going to give it a try, I want to give it the best try that I can. I want to put like the most guardrails up to keep them in the right lane and hope that like a change of direction does come for them, or a change of mindset of like, okay, maybe I do want this, versus, you know, going with, and there's an argument to be made that like even the softest program can work. Um, but the argument I'm trying to make here is that I think we're, as society, as people, where we've entered these stages of like, we want the easiest, softest way, and it doesn't often yield the best results. And we're even seeing it in our field where like, now in the past few months, I don't know what's going on behind me. It's distracting. Um,
It's okay. It's just a
I have a
cat.
cat doing somersaults. But what we what I've noticed in even the past few months is now there's like an ambulatory detox is what it's called. And essentially it's like, oh, stay at home and do a detox. Where used to you had to go to a medical facility where you have 24/7 medical staff overseeing your detox to make sure nothing dangerous is happening. You're not going into um, precipitated withdrawals. You're not having seizures. You're not, you know, they're making it a little more comfortable for you. But now it's like, hey, let's just do the bare minimum to make it as easy as possible for that person, but then they don't get good results. Instead of doing like a real, like in-person therapy is what you're seeing more of this with today. Instead of going in person for therapy, it's like, oh, I'll just use Chat GPT as my therapist. I'll use AI to talk through, this person that pissed me off in my life and how I can better communicate with that person. And I think that there's something lost there when you're not dealing with a real person. Like, who cares if I lie to my computer? But I'm going to have a harder time lying to Lucas, who's going to see me on a weekly basis and hold me accountable and say, oh, that didn't look right or sound right. Whereas my Chat GPT doesn't know, who the person is in my life that I'm telling it wronged me. So there's my rant.
No, I think that's good and true. And like ChatGPT also, I mean, it's just so supportive that it's like that's the last thing you need in your life is, I mean, ChatGPT is a yes man. At least when I talk to it, I'm just like, did you know 2 + 2 is 4? And it's like, you are an incredible genius. Probably the one of this generation that will like change math forever. And you're just like, oh my God, like I can't talk to this thing. It's just like too nice and too overly whatever. I just don't know that the accountability is there. And I mean, just as like a micro example, someone in my life who's struggling with their son using and drinking for a long time had been kind of against going to like a 12-step group for family members who are like supporting an addict alcoholic, and would go and be like, oh, I just don't relate with these people, whatever. And then more recently found like some Chat GPT version of like one of those groups and was like, this is the answer. Like I can just plug in a question of just like, my son texted me asking for $200 to pay his rent. Should I or should I not? And what should I say if I am going to or if I'm not? And it would give you answers and do whatever. But anyway, stuff kind of kept going. And then recently went to one of those 12-step meetings and said herself, like, went with a different attitude of, I'm going to look for the ways that I'm similar with these people, not that I'm different, and what I can get out of it and how I can be helped so that I can feel better. And then when a crisis popped up after that, really bad relapse, all kind of stuff with it. And watching this person in my life move through it in this totally different way was just so like just amazing to watch. Like the difference from like the Chat GPT version of her to the like actually going to a real support group version of her. It was like watching a different person. And it was just one of the coolest things. So like I think that people need that as much as they don't want it. Who wants to get up and look up all these different meetings and actually drive there? And then you got to like talk to people. And what if they don't like you? And what if they don't like you, but they don't say they don't like you, and you don't even know if they like you or not? There's like all these like crazy thoughts that we all have going into new experiences. What if I do something wrong and no one tells me? But that I think make all the difference to have that like real accountability and that real support. And last part is like, I think you're just like creating more angles to penetrate somebody who feels impenetrable. So when we get like the tough guy that doesn't really want it, if they went to like the most kind of bare bones sober living, and I'm not talking bad on it or anything, because that's enough for some people and that works for some people. But if they went there, there's going to be like a couple angles, right? It's peer led. There's no staff. They say you need to go to meetings, but they could go to the parking lot and just not go in. They say you can't use or drink, but how often are they drug testing? You know, whatever. And I think I'll just speak for our program to say that there's just like many more angles. So it's like, yeah, dude, you could not participate in group therapy, individual therapy, the gym time, the activities, rock climbing, jujitsu, Muay Thai, the weekend activities, the Sunday process group, the deep clean, the chores. Like there's so many more things that you have to kind of like rebuff to like keep away from you and just be like non-compliant and like, oh, I'm going to sit in group therapy and not talk, you know? And it's like for 6 hours, for 3 hours, you're not going to break one day at one moment, you know? But if you didn't have that there, they might never break at all. And they're just going to sit in their room and kind of stew and doom scroll on their phone and things will go off the rails. So I think it doesn't mean that it's going to work, because we've had guys that just like don't want any of it any of the time at all and end up maybe leaving early because they're just like, I'd rather anything but this. And I think that just speaks to the power of addiction. But I think it's like the best chance that I've seen of, yeah, just having a bunch of different angles on a bunch of different days. Every day, there's like 10 different angles that can penetrate this impenetrable person.
Yeah, I would like to go back on the ones that did leave and figure out like how their family supported them after they left. Like, were they guys that knew that they were back in the good graces of mom and dad or aunt and uncle and knew that they were going to be supported? Or were they guys that were like leaving fully on their own, making a decision that everyone else was against? And how long did that last if they were that? But, to your point, I look at it as like seeds being planted. And we have so many touch points in our program throughout the day of times where seeds are planted. And we're hoping that one of those seeds takes off, starts to bloom a little bit, and they start to get it of like, okay, maybe this is a better way of life, or how I should start to do things and think a little differently than I did before. Whereas, you go to a bare bones place with all they have to do is make it to 2 meetings a week and there's no staff in the house. It's like there are really 2 touch points for seeds to be planted of things that aren't their way. And then everything else throughout the week is they're doing things their way.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, back to my point of, you get the type of results of the amount of work you put into something. And like, if you don't put in a lot of work, you're probably not going to get good results. And look at it, anything else across the board, and this is, unfortunately, we're in a day and age where we want everything easy. We want to take a pill and it fix something. We want to watch a show and it fix something. But like, if you want to be a world-class bodybuilder, you're not going to do it by going to the gym 3 days a week. Those guys are going 3 times a day to the gym, and they're in the kitchen the rest of the day.
And they're in the bathroom shooting steroids at night. There's just sacrifice to do with it. And like stuff that's really, really hard on your body that you want for the single goal of, I want to look like this or be this thing.
Wouldn't you say recovery is that? Like, recovery is a hard thing to get. It was for me.
It's a hard thing to get. The point that I was going to make earlier is like the ambulatory detox. Like that could be fine for someone who really wants it. Someone who's like really like, God, I'm done. I just need someone to prescribe these medications so I can take them on these different days. I know that it's going to be hard, and there's going to be days where I'd rather go grab a drink or a drug than take this detox medication they've given me to take at home. But like, I'm just done, and I'm not going to go do that. And that's where I'm glad some of that stuff exists for those people. I think we just got to put people into the right boxes, which is hard. But like, there's a reason that kind of like lockdown, super medical support detox exists, it's not for no reason. It's because people need that, where they're like, gosh, if it's ambulatory detox tomorrow, I'm not taking this pill and I'm going to go do the drink or drug instead. But if I'm locked up in this detox and I got to like AMA and sign all this paperwork and figure out a ride and get out of here, then I know it's a really hard day, but I guess I'll just stay and figure it out, and get to tomorrow. And then hopefully I'll feel better tomorrow. And you can just kind of inch people along. And I think it's the same deal with sober living. It's where I was just talking to somebody more recently, but they were saying they were like thinking about making their family home a sober living for their son, and just kind of explaining to them, like really explaining to the son too, like, hey, I hope this works, and that these are always the types of things that I would love to be wrong on, that like I didn't think that could work, but I was wrong and it worked, and you've been sober to this day and your life's great. God, that's the best thing to be wrong on in the world. But I was like, if you find that it's tough, just know that it's not for no reason. It's because like a young guy like you, 21, 22, like needs the structure of a sober living to do the things that you need to do to stay sober, because left to your own devices to do them, you're like, I should go to a meeting today, but I'm not going to. I should go look for jobs today, but I'm not going to. I should look around this house and see what I can help with on chores, but maybe tomorrow. And that just like at every turn, without that accountability, you're not going to do it. And who is the easiest person to at least have the idea that like, well, I can get past this person? Mom and dad, like that's who I could manipulate. That's who I could give the right excuses to, whatever, to get past it. And that's not talking anything bad on mom or dad, but that same conversation led to us talking about how it's like the toughest people to hold accountable are your own kids. Right. And like we like love and care for these guys that come to our program, but they're not my kids. And I would hate to have to do a sober living for my son, because I know I would struggle to make like objective right calls that weren't clouded by emotion, because it's my son, and it's hard for me to hold him accountable at age 2, because it just like hurts. Like I have to sit on him sometimes to put his pajama pants on. And he screams like you would think I'm hurting him, killing him. And I'm doing everything I can to not hurt him at all. It's just like, we got to get these pajama pants on, like it's awful. It hurts me so bad. And I'm not saying it's pleasant to hold tough boundaries with the guys that come through our program, but I have to imagine that it's easier for us to do it than it is for their parents to do it, and to do it more consistently than their parents could do it. Also working jobs and having other kids and having a life going on. This is what we devote our working life to. And we have a whole team. So it's just like hard to recreate that.
That was a good point you made earlier of like, hey, to the mom and dad who wanted to bring their son home and treat it like a program. It's like, hey, you're wanting to run a program that we are well staffed for. Like mom and dad are wanting to do the jobs of 10 people over here. And you're wanting to take that on alone.
But I get it, because it's like, well, that's all they'll agree to do. Like none of it's like from a bad place or like hubris or just like, I don't think this is the right call, but I'm just going to do it anyways, or anything like that. It's just like, why we pitched him on sober living and he said no, and then maybe it's the tougher call of like, well, have you just said that like your house isn't an option? Like, we're not doing that here. Our house is not a sober living. We're not about to make it a sober living when sober livings exist. And by the way, why do you not want to go to sober living? And you want to make our house, like, if you want to make our house into a sober living, why not just go to one? What would be the difference in your mind? And I think if they were honest, the difference is like, oh, because your house will be way more comfortable. And I know that we can agree to some rules that tomorrow I will stop agreeing with and stop following. And I know at a sober living, it's these like dudes that are going to like take it real serious, and it's their work and it's their life. And they're not going to play around like mom and dad will, like, no, we're getting in the van. We're going to a meeting. That's what we do here. Get in the van.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold you down like my son. But it's just like, we don't like not go to meetings here. Like, that's just not an option, And when people hear that, they're like, dang, these guys mean business. I guess I got to go get in the van.
Yeah. But that's where I believe it's so much easier to work with the demographic that we work with versus a 56-year-old, where I do think more of that ambulatory detox could work, because they just have to make their own decisions. They've got their own money. most cases, if you're in your 50s or 60s, mom and dad aren't footing all of your bills anymore. You've got some anonymity, you've got, you're paying your way. So it kind of has to be your decision. But with our age group, it's normally mom and dad who are holding the power and can force their hand a little bit or force the direction that they want them to go in a little bit just by saying like, and this is as simple as it gets. The simplest way you can describe it is, hey, the life that you're choosing to live, we don't agree with. We think it's unhealthy and we don't want to support it. Therefore, we're pulling away all of our resources. If you do want to go do this healthier lifestyle that we're in agreement with, we'll support that 100%. But unless it's that, we're out. We're pulling out of this game that you're wanting to play. You're not like pulling us into your chaos anymore. And I get that that's much easier said than done. And it's super scary for parents to do. But like at least you have those cards to play. Whereas like, hey, you continue, you don't hold those boundaries, continue to let your child do this until they're in their 40s and 50s. Now you have zero control and they're still a mess. Now they have to figure it out on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a unique position to catch a person in when they're young enough to still be completely like dependent on parents. And that's kind of that's a symptom of the problem, right? Like, because your average 25-year-old that's doing really well and either graduated from college, got a skill, figured out like work, whatever, they're not living at their parents' house. They're not dependent on their parent for bills. So like, that's not who we work with. But if you're 25 and you're still living in parents' basement, like there's probably something up. I mean, maybe you just chose to stay and you just love your parents and they love having you there and it makes sense. I'm not saying to be against it, but I feel like the average person where you see that, especially when drugs and alcohol are involved, it's probably not good. And them still living with the parents and the parents paying for everything is a symptom of the problem that then gives them a unique leverage point to be like, hey, we're done with this. Like you said, you got to go somewhere. And that's what we're going to support. We're not doing this anymore. But yeah, that's totally gone when someone's independent. Then it's like really more on them. But if we can catch these guys when they're like 18, 19, 20, even as old as like 30, 32, whatever, and get it earlier, they don't have to be that 50-year-old that has to make that way tougher call. And they get like 20, 30 years of like good, sober life accomplishment before they even hit 50. The guys that we've succeeded with that are 25 and now they're 33, and have like 8 years sober. By the time they hit 40, I mean, they're on a totally different trajectory than what they were on.
Yeah. I was typing over here because this is another issue that you're hearing. It's popping up all over is the number of young men that are not doing it, young adult men, so over 18 that are living with mom and dad, not doing anything. They're not working. They're not in school. They're like crashing out.
Mm-hmm.
If that's like the newer term.
Gen Z, baby, shout out.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you have like the rate at which men are consuming alcohol is going down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about drugs. I would think that is similar, that's going down to the rate at which they're consuming drugs. But then you have other addictions flaring up. You have social media, electronic addiction just taking over, which I think is largely to blame. And I do think that there's going to have to be similar programs to ours that addresses multiple kinds of addiction. Like you could take what we preach and you could apply it to gambling addiction, sex addiction, pornography addiction, drug addiction. Electronic addiction is about to become, in my belief, the next big wave here of like what is just ruining people's lives, male and female.
I think it's just another thing that adds to the underlying problem, which we say, isn't the drugs and alcohol and isn't the social media and isn't the whatever. It's like the feelings that those things cause, like the lack of self-respect, the lack of self-esteem, the lack of community or connection. That like those are the things that are missing. And I think social media and like electronic addiction is just another thing that isolates people, makes them feel like shit about themselves. Look what I have compared to what someone else has. I'm like failing in life, blah, 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 fill in the blank. And then, yeah, maybe they double down on electronics because of those feelings, or maybe they turn to drugs and alcohol because of those feelings. But it's just another thing propelling them towards the feelings that are what beget the actions of like doing drugs and alcohol that then we would see. And I see that with all the guys we work with. Like the guys that you see that are like struggling the most are like, man, my anxiety and depression are just out of control and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, hey, man, show me your Instagram feed. All drinking and drugs, all what all the other young, cool kids are doing. And they're partying here on a Tuesday and they're doing that. And they're on a boat on the weekend and they're fall break doing this and that, and you're looking at it like, God, I am just a total screw up who's like got nothing in life. Look at all these people my age having this fun. And look at them with like relationship partners and I'm single. And look at them with great jobs and I'm unemployed. And look at them on like an awesome family vacation and my family sent me to treatment. It's like it just is every possible negative thing you would want to see. I'm like, dude, I know why you're anxious and depressed, at least part of it. Like, I'm not saying chemical imbalances in the brain don't exist, but it's like, this is probably a pretty good start. If we clean up this feed, like, what if you were seeing positive things instead of just things that make you feel bad? And why do you craft your feed in a way that is only things that make you feel bad? Like, let's dive into that because that's the quote we were just talking about too. We're going to weave it in. Until you make the unconscious conscious, what is it? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And it's like, why do I set my life up for all these negative things that make me feel bad? And I think that's like the back of my brain, the addict alcoholic part that's like, because we need to feel bad to justify doing drugs and alcohol. And if like shit's going good and we're getting jobs and we have great people around us and all that, we don't have a great excuse to go drink and do drugs because like those needs are kind of being met. So we kind of need the feed to be terrible and make us feel bad. And we don't need a job like building the self-esteem. We don't need those people trying to get us to come hang out and do whatever and have a good time, because then I wouldn't need drugs and alcohol. And that part of my brain is telling me I need drugs and alcohol. So I got to set up my life to where I need it only more and more, not less and less.
Maybe we should start algorithm therapy where people have to come in, give up control of their Instagram and Facebook passwords to the therapist, let the therapist dive into what's popping up on their feed, and then start addressing the issue from there.
I think it's good. And I think it's necessary for anybody. Cause I mean, it's like, all right, if you look at social media for 15 minutes a day, that's probably not going to make that much of an impact. But I look at the average guy that we work with, and that's something I will do is their algorithm. And I'll be like, let me see your screen time. And it's like 8 hours of Snapchat,
When
6
you're
hours
living
of
in it.
Instagram. It's like, this is all you see. You spend so many hours of the day here, and this is a terrible place. And you've made it a terrible place. Like, it's your own place to decorate. You can put the couch over there. You can put a nice one or a bad one. You can put positive inspirational quotes. And I'm not saying that's just going to make you feel better, but it'll make you not feel as bad as stuff that makes you feel like gives you negative feelings.
Yeah.
It's your house to decorate.
This is kind of another spin on it. This is taking it outside of the addiction realm, but I was listening to a Dave Ramsey clip where a young girl called in. She was 33 years old, working a $60,000 a year salary job, and she was like, "What is wrong with me? Like, what am I doing wrong?" Because every time I go online, I see all of these people that I'm friends with. They're driving fancy cars, they're going on fancy vacations, living in nice homes, and I feel like I must be doing something wrong. And Dave explained it as like, no, you're like, the keeping up with the Joneses has changed. Like now, keeping up with the Joneses is looking online at what other people have, and it's just their highlight reel, and you don't know what's behind it, because of this great thing called the internet. Like they can just put their best foot forward. You don't see anything else. Whereas before the internet, keeping up with the Joneses was keeping up with your neighbors. And you might see your neighbor come home with a new car, but then you'd hear he and his wife yelling at each other on the back porch that night, and start to realize like, okay, there's some bad with the good. Or see their kid ditching out of school 3 days a week and failing all of his classes. And it's like, okay, like yeah, I may not have the car that they have, but like, I have some other positive things that are going for me. Where like with the internet, you don't get to see the downside. Like with all of the guys in our program, when they're living in the internet, all of they're seeing is people's good sides, their best foot forward. And you don't see the cons that come with it. I get stuck in it, and you call me out on it all the time, even with other like programs where it's like, man, these people seem like they're just crushing it over here. They're like, how do they stay full all the time? Yet we're over here like always trying to do right by people, like do the right thing, and we can't stay full. And then you hear 2 years later that they were running some kind of insurance scam or like, but you didn't hear the downside of it or see the downside. I think that's just a big thing we're facing now. And unfortunately, a lot of our guys, they turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with it. Like they start to feel this feeling of like unworthiness. Their pride is depleted, and now they want to just numb out. They want to take drugs or use alcohol to get rid of that icky feeling that they're not good enough.
Yeah. And that Dave Ramsey point is so good because it is so unnatural. And I've also heard it for like someone was saying like in your life, like if you were like in a village or a small town or whatever, like you might see like one like just 10 out of 10 person of the opposite sex you'd be attracted to. There's like one of those per town, like little town or little village, even going further back. We're just like, oh my gosh, that's like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. And they're like, but now you can go on social media and see as many of those women as you possibly can, back to back to back, and naked and doing all kind of other stuff. It's like, it is just like so unnatural to how we were designed to be. And the same thing with like the friends or the neighbors. It's like now your neighbor is everybody. And then that's funny because that's twofold where it's like, what are people predisposed to post on social media? Like there's the receiving side and there's the giving side. Like, what do I give to social media? The most positive things about my life that then I hope people will say, wow, that's awesome. So I get validation from it so I can feel better about what I have. And then someone else sees that and they're like, look at what he's got. I don't even have that. So it's like twofold. Everyone's predisposed to only put the positive stuff forward. And then that like lacks the nuance where someone can be like, oh, but their life isn't perfect. And there's always someone better and always someone worse. But how often are you scrolling through social media and you see like someone with a worse car and you're like, man, that really gives me a lot of gratitude for the car that I have. Like I could be driving that car and my car's not the best in the world, but like it's solid. Or that person posted that they broke down today in their car. My car hadn't broken down in years. Like, no, it's like we're just more predisposed to seeing the nicer car and being like, must be nice. I don't know what they're doing over there. I wish I had that job or I could afford that car or whatever. And they also might not tell you that they got like a 25% interest rate on like a $3,000 a month car payment that it's just like, well, I don't want that. It's like, well, that's what they're doing to get that car and it's going to get repoed in 6 months. So is that the life that you want? Just so you can post the one Facebook photo and get some likes and comments and whatever? Like, is it worth it? And I think that's where I also, and I may be more foolishly optimistic, but I do think there's like a wave also happening. And we talked about this the other day of people being more aware of social media and being aware of these things that we're talking about, that like, oh, everyone only shows the positive and clean up your feed. And like, it kind of, that's what you're going to consume. That's what like, it's the same thing as like what you eat in a day, or if you go to the gym, or what people you keep around you. Like social media is that important of that's what like you're taking in. So be careful about what you take in. I see more awareness and more talk about that kind of stuff too, which gives me hope that that could be changing for the better as people are more awake to it, and even younger people. And that was what we were really talking about, is like, how are people raising their kids today? And I think 10 years ago, when there wasn't as much talk about this, you got 10-year-olds getting Facebook, 4-year-olds are getting iPads. Mm-hmm. And I will say, just as like a newer parent now, more parents that I'm talking to than ever are like, oh, my kid's not getting a smartphone until they're 18. And we don't do iPads in our house. We only do books and stuff like, and that, I know that's not everybody, but I think there's more of those people than there were 10 years ago. And not any knock to people 10 years ago. We just didn't know. We're just like, isn't social media amazing? It's the best thing ever with no downsides. And what was there, that one Netflix documentary that guy with red hair came out with? I can't remember what it was called. but someone made like a documentary that like really exposed social media, and it was the whole idea of like Facebook isn't the product, you're the product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're the product, and the customer, you're not the customer, you're the product. The customer is advertisers.
Yeah.
And whatever keeps you on there more hours of the day, more scrolls, more ad seen is more money for them. And so they want you to look. And we're just predisposed to watch the news, not for golden retrievers and rainbows, but for storms and wars, you know, and like terrible political stuff going on.
Yeah. No, it's a crazy world we're navigating now. But like you said, there is a lot more education around it these days. But like anything new that comes out, there's you have to give it time before you get education around it and you really know what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like this ambulatory detox. That's a thing right now, but we could find out in 5 years that it's causing more harm than good, and it goes away. Maybe it's not a insurance driven thing anymore. But
yeah, and it also could be more good than harm.
Yeah.
We just got to kind of figure it out. And again, I think that in recovery, the point that I would make, like overarching for all this stuff, is I think there are, and I think there should be many boxes for recovery. This level sober living, this level sober living, this level treatment, this level treatment, this type of detox, that type of detox. And I think really the problem happens when we just don't get people into the right boxes. But I think the better we can sort people into the right boxes to go to the right place that they need, that's going to work for them, even if sometimes they don't believe that or want that.
Well, that's what's hard, is like, how do you find the right boxes when they don't know what they need? Like, I didn't know what I needed. I needed other people to call the shots for me for a while.
Well, I think some of that is on the programs, because like programs will say, like, how many programs nowadays are like, oh, like box? No, we're one size fits all. We take everybody all the time, everywhere, all at once.
That's my issue with it, right? And I should have said that from the beginning. Is like ambulatory detox will market it as like they're a good option for everybody out there.
And that's crazy to me, because I think there's some people that just need to go inpatient detox. And of course there are. And then I would say on the flip end, of course, there's people who really could do ambulatory detox and don't need that. And the ambulatory detox would be better for them and less disruptive to their life. And they're ready to make a change, and it's all good. And I'd say the same thing for like many different types of sober livings or treatment or whatever, that like, yeah, there's just different boxes. People need to be honest about what their box is. Like our box for sober living is like young men, generally that are like not married and don't have kids. There's like many people that we turn down because we're like, hey, we don't think that you're going to like thrive in our box. And our box is like small, and it's just what we make it, but we try to make it a really, really good box, and we do one thing really well, but we don't work with women, unfortunately. Nothing against them or anything like that. It would just make our box maybe too big and roomy, that it wouldn't be as good of a box at that point. And if I was going to do women, I'd do just a women's program, because I think women's issues can be so different from men's that like to be solely focused on them gives them a better experience. So I just think that, yeah, so many people are like, oh, our box is one size fits all. Take anybody, anytime, any insurance, any amount of money, have money, no money, whatever. Like we just take everybody all the time. It's like, ugh, that can't be a box. That's just like a room or the world.
Yeah.
It's like no walls or containers.
Yeah. And that's from like the programmatic side of us, like figuring out what our box is and staying true to that box. But for the client, I don't know. I just feel like I'm hearing more and more people saying like, oh, well, we'll do what you want to do, and letting them kind of steer the ship with their recovery. And my point is that, like, I think as humans, we always want to choose the easier, softer path. Like talking about the bodybuilder, like, oh, I'll just go take steroids. I don't want to spend all my time in the kitchen and all my time in the gym. I'll just go find all the steroids that I can and I'll take those. Or whatever, like musician, like, oh, well, I'll just create like AI music and then write off of that and call it my own. I don't want to spend all of my time like learning how to play all of these instruments and writing my own music. I don't know. I feel like you just can't Or maybe I'm trying to blend two topics that don't need to be blended.
No, I think it's true. And I mean, I'll tell you this, and I have a limited amount of information. I've not talked to everyone in the world, but just from what we see, the average guys that have parents that would call our program or the guy that would call our program, I see so often that if, you know, treatment or PHP just kind of being like intensive, like outpatient, and treatment being inpatient. If those two are on the table, I always see the guys say they want to do PHP. If it's PHP or IOP, they say they want to do IOP. If it's IOP or OP or just going to therapy, they say they want to just go to therapy. If it's therapy or go to AA or like a 12-step organization, they probably say therapy because that's only once a week and they don't have to get a sponsor and they won't have to work steps. And, but like, I'll tell you the one thing that always seems in common is that they kind of are picking like the easier, softer, less intrusive path to that would obstruct the least their drinking and drugging and how they can get back to that the soonest. So I've even seen where they're like, well, I would do a PHP program for 30 days before I'd go to sober living for 6 months because the PHP would be more intensive, but it would only be for 30 days. 6 months is a long time to go without drugs and alcohol. So like you see all the kind of like addict math going, which I can relate to, like, and I hope I'm not just projecting, but I just see this all the time with guys where it's like, they just always pick the easier, softer, shorter thing. Always. It's like, I know that's not coincidence. It's just that like, and then you take a program like ours that's like, oh, like pretty intensive, structured, sober living, chores, phases, probably going to be year long, got to get a job, going to stay here. Your family's going to get therapy too. We're going to like all be talking all the time and like get everybody on the same page. Just like everything that you're like, screw all that. I'm not doing that, No, let me just go to treatment for 30 days and get out, So like, it's just tough when you're trying to offer a lot of stuff that, people need and can benefit from, but that most of the time when they're not in a healthy place, they're not going to choose.
Yeah. And it's tough to decide which person is which is the one that you let take that path of just like, okay, whatever you're willing to do. Oh, you don't want to see a normal therapist, an in-person therapist, do an AI therapist. Like, which person do you let go that path and which one do you say like, no, we're holding a boundary here. You need to do this.
My thing would be when you're in a position where like life's not going well and you can hold boundaries with the person, like you have boundaries to hold the boundaries. And if it makes change, it makes change. If it doesn't, at least you did everything you could to keep yourself healthy and hold boundaries of like what you're going to tolerate and accept in your life. And if it's your son who's still living in your house, you got a lot of boundaries to hold, which is a great thing. It's going to be a hard thing, but it's a great thing. Because you got so many ways that are going to probably make them really think about it of like, man, if my parents hold these boundaries, like I'm going to have to change. So I guess I have to change because otherwise it's like tomorrow I got to figure out a new place to live. I'm going to pay all my bills, all that kind of stuff. But I've seen it even with older people where they're like, hey, we're just like not going to be in your life anymore because we can't keep living like this. And the older person might be like, gosh, you're right, I should change. Or they might be like, well, I'm going to go back to my house that I pay with my job and my bills and do my thing. And if y'all don't want to be in my life, fine. And it's like, okay. But at least you got to like try and like get them to do something positive for their life and hold your own boundaries of like, I can't watch you kill yourself slowly. So I just think that's always the answer. It just may not get the solution that you want, but I still think it's the right call. And sometimes it doesn't work immediately. Sometimes, I mean, how many guys have we had where the parents hold the boundaries? And I've done this twice, or I'm sorry, once. I've been threatened with it twice, done it once, where I'm just like, oh, you want to say I can't live here? I'm packing my bag and I'm going to go. Won't y'all regret that and just wonder where I am? Like, it was so emotionally manipulative, and the parents are like, God, we did all that, the intervention, blah, 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 and it didn't work. And it's like, oh, maybe. And then how many times do we see it where like 2 days later they call and they're like, fine, I'll go to that stupid program. And it's like, oh, what happened, big shot? Like, you said you had it all figured out. You got friends all over the place that'll let you live with them. And you find out it was like one friend who said they could sleep on their couch for 2 days and they didn't tell them they were being kicked out of their house and that all they had to do was go to a program to like have some place to live. And then they're just like, no, dude, go to that program. You can't live with me. Like, you don't have a job or anything. And all you do is want to like drink and do drugs on my couch. You can't live here. So like
Yeah.
sometimes it just takes a little time to set in.
Yeah. Well, that is time. I apologize for the for the windy road of conversation.
Many tangents.
Yeah, we're still missing Cole. Cole's been on a little trip, little vacay.
He's in
We'll be
Spain
back.
eating tacos.
Yeah, off to Spain, but he will be back next week. And we should have some exciting guests coming up. So that's all for now.
Okay.